Imagine waking up to the distant wail of an all-clear siren. The air's thick with the smell of smoke and wet ashes.
Yeah.
You're stepping carefully over shattered glass on your way to work, knowing that just hours ago, your city was under siege.
Right.
Yet, almost instinctively, you see the milkman resuming his rounds, his bottles clinking against broken pavements, and you pause to help a neighbor salvage a door blown off its hinges. That's the surreal, resilient reality we're diving into today.
What's truly striking in our source material, a deeply compelling narrative exploring, a single day in London during the height of the Blitz, 1940-41, is precisely this profound paradox. How the most ruthless horror coexisted, day in and day out, with the most mundane routines.
You really
It gives us an incredible granular window into the lived experiences of ordinary civilians, a young typist, a young couple, an older couple, and even illuminates an often overlooked aspect, how individuals with mental illness navigated this period of sustained terror.
So, yeah, our mission for this deep dive is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight from these accounts. We'll explore not just how Londoners survived, but how they carried on with remarkable resilience and ingenuity. You'll gain a shortcut to being truly well-informed about this incredible chapter of history, hearing specific examples and anecdotes that truly bring the fear, the surprising facts, and the sheer human spirit of those 8 months to vivid life.
And this raises a fascinating question for us to explore. What profound truths about human nature and societal endurance are revealed when a population faces such relentless existential threat?
It's an essential question, isn't it? And we're about to uncover some remarkable answers, so settle in, because we're about to go deep into a day unlike any other. All right, so the all-clear siren has just sounded at 4 a.m., signaling the precarious beginning of a new day. But what does that new day actually look like on the streets of London after a night of relentless bombing? What's the immediate aftermath for someone stepping out?
Well, the initial moments are a harsh awakening to a fundamentally altered landscape. The city immediately shifts from a battlefield back to a functioning metropolis, albeit one scarred and smoldering.
Right.
This is where we see the immediate human capacity for adaptation, for normalizing the utterly abnormal. People aren't just reacting, they're already in the rhythm of this new normalcy.
That adaptability is powerfully evident in the story of Alice, our first character. She's a typist in her 20s, and she's waking up in a tube station shelter. Imagine your bedroom being a subway platform surrounded by strangers, the rumble of trains above replaced by the distant echoes of explosions. What does she encounter when she emerges?
Alice steps out and immediately notices the omnipresent dust still hanging heavy in the air. Her street, once familiar, now bears fresh, gaping wounds. New bomb craters, buildings reduced to rubble.
Wow.
She navigates around heaps of shattered glass, which become an unsettlingly routine part of her walk to work. The air is thick with the acrid smell of wet ashes and smoldering timbers, a constant sensory reminder of the night's devastation. Yet, even as she literally picks her way through destruction, life's small, mundane rhythms are already asserting themselves.
That juxtaposition is truly striking. You have these immediate visceral signs of destruction, but then the milkmen are already back on their rounds, their bottles clunking on broken pavements. Newspaper boys are crying the morning's headlines, almost as if it were just any other day.
Exactly.
Alice herself pauses to help a neighbor salvage a door that's been blown off its hinges, and they exchange weary, grateful smiles. It's a quiet, incredibly powerful testament to shared survival and the immediate return to community even before the dust has truly settled.
That small act of helping her neighbor, performed almost instinctively, speaks volumes. It underscores that the resilience wasn't just about enduring the bombs, but about the immediate, almost defiant resumption of life.
Right.
It's in these myriad small collective actions that what would come to be known as the Blitz spirit truly began to manifest. It was less about grand gestures and more about getting on with it together.
From central London, let's turn to the outskirts, where we meet Tom and Margaret, a young couple emerging from their Anderson shelter. For listeners unfamiliar, an Anderson shelter was this corrugated steel hideaway, half sunk in the back garden, its roof heaped with protective earth. It sounds incredibly basic, but for thousands, it was their only sanctuary. What were the practical realities of living with one of these?
Oh, the sheer practicality and often discomfort of these shelters is fascinating. Tom stretches his stiff limbs as he exits because the interior was incredibly cramped, only 6 feet long by 4.5 feet wide, a tight fit for 2 people in their bedding.
Tiny.
Margaret's first chore often involved hauling out a bucket that served as a chamber pot, as there was no plumbing down there. They also regularly had to mop up puddles because the lack of proper drainage meant water collected inside after rainstorms.
Ugh, damp and cold.
These were far from luxurious. They were damp, dim, and claustrophobic.
It paints such a vivid picture. The smell of damp earth mixed with breakfast, knowing your life was just saved by this tiny metal box. Our source tells us shrapnel pings off the metal roof were a common sound, even after the raid.
A constant reminder.
And they had an incredibly close call. A fallen brick wall next door was clear evidence that their seemingly flimsy shelter had withstood a blast that had toppled houses nearby.
It emphasizes the terrifying arbitrariness of survival. One night, your life depends entirely on a few sheets of steel and a bit of earth. This necessity, however, forged a powerful sense of ingenuity.
How so?
Margaret's morning routine, for instance, perfectly illustrates this making-do attitude. She'd rekindle the stove and boil water from a pail they kept by the door, specifically for extinguishing incendiary bombs. This wasn't just common practice, it was a constant, essential readiness for fire.
Always prepared. And then there's breakfast, a stark illustration of how pervasive the war was. Margaret prepares a meager meal, slices of victory bread, a national wholemeal loaf with just a scrape of margarine instead of butter, and weak tea. These daily details truly paint a picture of how rationing impacted every single household.
Indeed. Everything from meat and sugar to butter, cheese, tea, and even soap was rationed. This led to much simpler, often monotonous meals, but also, surprisingly, a healthier diet for many.
Really? How did that work?
Well, the Dig for Victory campaign, which saw families turning corners of their gardens over to vegetables like cabbages, wasn't merely patriotic. It was a necessary supplement to their meager rations. Less fried food, more veg.
Makes sense.
And Tom's factory work, being in a reserved occupation that kept him out of military service, further underscores how every individual's role was fundamentally redefined by the war effort. Everyone had a part to play, civilian or otherwise.
Our third couple, Edward and Maud, in their 60s, offer yet another perspective. They rise from their Morrison shelter, which sounds almost like a piece of furniture, but served a far more grim purpose. This was a reinforced steel table in their parlor where they would crawl underneath at night.
Right, basically a steel cage indoors.
The government began providing these indoor shelters in 1941, a true blessing for those too frail to run to distant public bunkers or without gardens for an Anderson.
What's particularly poignant here is the immediate, intimate impact of the bombing on their specific community. They wake to find a high-explosive bomb has fallen just down their street, leaving a row of roofless, charred terrace houses. Their longtime greengrocer shop is now just rubble.
Devastating.
ERP wardens and neighbors are already picking through the debris, and you can see messages chalked on shattered walls. All safe gone to shelter. A desperate effort to communicate survival to loved ones. It's a microcosm of the widespread destruction across London.
And here's where we get a profound insight into the Blitz spirit itself, the king and queen enduring bombings. Buckingham Palace itself took a hit, putting the monarchy literally in the same boat as us, as people like to say.
Yeah, that was huge psychologically.
Queen Elizabeth famously declared that she could now look the East End in the face after the palace was bombed. How did this shared suffering, this common experience of vulnerability, actually foster unity rather than resentment?
It's an incredible psychological phenomenon. Shared vulnerability, surprisingly, often removes traditional class barriers. Edward, despite a painful leg injury from a Great War gas attack, insists on joining a bucket brigade to douse a small fire.
Even injured.
Maud, too, carries a thermos of hot tea, offering it to a stunned shop owner whose livelihood has just been destroyed. These immediate practical acts of assistance, fueled by shared hardship, created an incredibly powerful sense of we're all in this together. It transcended social divides, becoming the very foundation of London's endurance. It was a rapid collective embrace of mutual aid.
So, despite the morning's destruction and the horrors of the night, life had to go on. Alice, our young typist, heads to her secretarial job at the ministry. The sheer grit is astounding. How does one even begin to focus on typing with a gaping hole in the ceiling, as our source describes?
It truly speaks to a deep-seated British resolve, a determined pragmatism. Her office is visibly understaffed. Many colleagues have joined the services or been reassigned. Sunlight streams through that gaping hole in the roof, patched with tarpaulin, and plaster dust occasionally falls on her papers.
Keep typing.
This was their new normal, a constant low-level disruption. Every distant siren or faint drone of aircraft would bring the typing pool to an immediate, eerie silence, ears pricked, until they were sure it was just a test or friendly planes.
Always on edge.
And of course, every window was crisscrossed with sticky tape, a ubiquitous sign of the times meant to minimize splintering glass.
And the personal safety measures are stark reminders of the constant invisible threat. Alice keeps her gas mask in her drawer, though thankfully the feared gas attacks never materialized. But beyond simply enduring, how did people find ways to maintain morale and even find moments of joy amidst this?
That's where the small acts of defiance come in. At lunch, Alice meets her friend Rose, and they swap small luxuries, perhaps an apple for some homemade jam, little things.
Yeah.
They chat about the news, the latest RAF raid on Berlin, or Churchill's defiant speech. They even make tentative plans to go to the cinema if there's no heavy raid that night, because entertainment was absolutely vital for morale.
Needed those escapes.
Posters plastered everywhere, even in the tube, constantly implored citizens to keep their spirits up. Your courage, your cheerfulness, your resolution will bring us victory, and Britain can take it. The idea of carrying on became less a slogan and more a way of life, regardless of whether they'd ever seen the famous Keep Calm poster.
After lunch, Alice volunteers for a shift at a women's voluntary service, or WVS, canteen near Charing Cross. She helps serve hot stew and tea to hundreds of people who have been bombed out of their homes. How widespread was this kind of community volunteerism during the Blitz?
It was absolutely everywhere, a powerful demonstration of social cohesion. People were constantly handing out tea in emergency kitchens, knitting socks for soldiers, or driving ambulances through burning streets.
Whoa.
This work was exhausting and often grim, yet it fundamentally knitted Londoners together with a shared purpose. It created a strong sense of collective identity and responsibility. These civilian efforts were as crucial as any military action in keeping the city functioning and its spirit intact.
Meanwhile, Tom works a half day at the munitions plant, his reserved occupation, keeping him out of military service. And even at the factory gates, the war is a constant presence, with Home Guard recruits handing out leaflets about what to do if an invasion comes. How real was that fear of invasion in 1940?
In 1940, the fear of a Nazi invasion was palpable, almost suffocating. German forces were massing just across the channel, and these leaflets urging, "Keep fighting, never surrender," were a constant, grim reminder of the stakes.
Terrifying.
Margaret's Morning, however, paints a very different but equally challenging picture of the home front. She faces the daily grind of braving long queues for their weekly meat ration, a scant shilling's worth per person, barely a pound of beef.
Can you imagine the patience, the sheer endurance of waiting in line, knowing you're getting so little? Housewives would swap recipes for making the most of tin, Spam, and lentils. Everyone was making dough, watering down milk, stretching butter with margarine, baking ingenious carrot cakes with no eggs or sugar, all guided by government food flash pamphlets. How did a nation cope with such dietary restrictions?
It's a remarkable story of adaptation. Counterintuitively, the rationing system, while incredibly restrictive, paradoxically promoted better health for many. By necessity, diets shifted towards fresh vegetables from gardens and allotments, replacing some of the heavier fried foods common pre-war. And the British restaurants, which offered a hot 3-course meal for just 9 pence, were a clever social engineering scheme.
Ah, yes.
They ensured laborers got enough to eat, eased resentment, and maintained equitable access to food, preventing a situation where only the wealthy could eat well.
Then there are the household duties, like hanging laundry, carefully timed on a clear day to avoid soot from fires. And of course, the ever-present blackout preparations before sunset, every window tightly covered with heavy blackout curtains or boards. Why was this so strictly enforced?
A single chink of light could earn you a warden's scolding or a hefty fine, but more critically, it could literally guide enemy bombers to their targets.
Life or death.
The daily inconvenience of the gloomy dimness indoors from these precautions was a constant, tangible reminder of the war. Make do and mend was truly the order of the day. Nothing was thrown away. Even newspapers became thinner due to paper rationing. Yet despite the grim news of bombing elsewhere, the Evening Standard, though thinner, would also carry news of RAF successes, like attacks on German ports and headlines proclaiming, "London defies the Luftwaffe." These were crucial for bolstering morale, alongside the quiet, individual rituals, like brewing a nice cuppa to steady frayed nerves.
For Edward and Maud, our older couple, midday means a modest lunch of vegetable soup from their homegrown leeks and potatoes, and yesterday's bread. They reflect on rationing being fair. Everyone gets their share, no more, no less, Edward says, noting that wartime controls actually reduced inequalities. Does this suggest a broader societal shift?
It absolutely does. This point highlights how, for some, the shared hardship of rationing fostered a surprising sense of fairness and unity, marking a distinct departure from the entrenched class divisions of peacetime.
Interesting.
The wireless, the radio, became an absolutely indispensable lifeline. The BBC News brought calm, authoritative reports, while cheerful music programs featuring Vera Lynn provided comfort and a strong sense of shared community.
Yep.
The government understood this deeply. They also broadcast music while you work into factories to boost morale, and public information bulletins on everything from how to extinguish incendiary bombs to what gas attack signals meant.
And then there's the Salvage for Victory campaign. Maud hands over old newspapers and a dented aluminum pan to the collector. Waste materials were recycled for the war effort, kitchen scraps fed chickens, and even fish and chip shops saved grease for munitions manufacture. It really drives home how truly total the war effort was. Every single person, every household was contributing in some way.
It was a monumental, collective effort that reached into every corner of civilian life. Maud sees a new poster at the town hall. Britain can take it, and she feels a surge of determination. That phrase became an informal rallying cry.
Powerful.
Their thoughts then turned to family, their son in North Africa, and their grandchildren who were evacuated to the countryside, but then returned to London with their daughter.
That's a common dilemma from that period. Evacuation saved many children from the worst of the Blitz, but the separation was deeply traumatic for families. They faced the wrenching choice between safety apart or facing danger together.
Exactly. Maud's letter to a friend in the countryside perfectly captures the duality of the time. Admitting fear, it's nerve-wracking, the nightly waiting for the sirens, but also expressing fierce pride. We are tired and anxious, but our spirit is unbroken.
It's those personal, honest reflections that provide true insight into the human spirit under pressure. Morale is maintained not just through official propaganda, but through camaraderie and humor, as evidenced by the local pubs still serving watery pints and hosting sing-alongs, even with boarded windows.
Yes, and Maud's quiet ritual of lighting a candle briefly at sunset, just for a minute before the blackout, to honor those lost and signal hope, speaks to the deeply personal ways people found to cope and to affirm life in the face of constant threat.
As the sun dips, London doesn't just get dark, it becomes a ghostly silhouette. The streetlights are off, vehicles drive with masked headlamps, and a deep blackout shrouds every building. The entire city shifts gears, preparing for the nightly menace to return. What did this transformation mean for Londoners?
It was a complete shift into a war zone, even before the first bombs fell. Only the dull red glow of a distant fire or the sweeping beam of a searchlight hinted at shapes in the night. This was the moment Londoners truly braced themselves, preparing for another night of terror, understanding that their city had essentially become a target under the vast, starless dome of the blackout.
Alice, after a quick supper of corned beef hash, meticulously checks her emergency bag ID cards, a flashlight, water, bandages, and her most precious letters and photos. At 7:30 p.m., the now familiar air raid sirens begin their eerie rising wail, and her stomach still flips, part fear, part adrenaline. She grabs her bag and joins streams of people heading to the nearest underground station. How many people actually sought refuge in the tube, and what did that look like?
This mass movement is truly staggering to visualize. On heavy bombing nights, over 1 million people would shelter in the tube system, transforming platforms and even idle tunnels into temporary dormitories.
1 million people!
Wow. Hammocks were strung up, makeshift beds of blankets and straw mattresses laid out. Families clustered together with their belongings, creating these astonishingly organized, improvised communities underground, sometimes for months on end.
It's astonishing to consider these underground spaces becoming miniature cities complete with social committees and even impromptu dance parties, all while bombs are falling just above them.
Absolutely. The air was warm and thick with the smell of humanity and the chemical tang of portable toilets. But there was also this surprising conviviality, a camaraderie. People joked about going to Bedfordshire, a wry reference to bedding down.
So how is it organized?
The sense of community was paramount to survival. Shelter committees organized specific zones, a smoker's area, quiet areas for babies. Notices about lost items or public health concerns, such as shelter throat from the stagnant air, were pinned up. WVS volunteers, like Alice, distributed hot tea from giant kettles directly on the platforms, a truly vital comfort. And to lift spirits, church volunteer groups brought gramophones, organizing concert parties or sing-alongs.
Music while bombs fell.
Exactly. While officials worried about potential political agitation in these crowded spaces, for those underground, it was simply a vital way to maintain sanity and humanity.
As the music plays, there's a low tremor, the dull boom of a bomb detonating somewhere above. The lights flicker, children squeal, dust trickles from the ceiling. Alice's heart pounds, but she continues to focus on pouring tea. This combination of mundane acts and profound terror existing side by side is incredibly striking.
And incredibly, some people were so utterly exhausted, they managed to sleep through it all. By 9 p.m., the faint drone of Luftwaffe bombers could be heard through the ventilation shafts. And above ground, the anti-aircraft guns, the distinctive ack-ack fire, would begin to crack.
That must have been comforting in a way.
The gunners might hit little at night, but that constant shooting provided immense psychological comfort, the feeling that we're hitting back, that London wasn't just taking it. Alice's diary entry captures this surreal daily life perfectly. Another long night. Odd how normal this has become. Tea, talk, and dance music by the tracks while bombs fall.
Meanwhile, Tom and Margaret are huddled in their Anderson shelter in the suburbs. They're already prepared when the siren wails, quickly donning heavy coats and sturdy shoes. Some Londoners even slept in special siren suits, those one-piece jumpsuits designed for quick dressing to dash to shelter.
Right, speed was essential.
They grab their torch and a candle, making sure their cat is indoors, having tragically lost one to shock just last month.
Their efforts to make the curved steel dugout a homey haven are particularly telling of human ingenuity and emotional resilience. They laid old carpets on the floor, taped floral pictures of the king and queen on the thin metal walls, set up narrow cots, and even had a small shelf with books and a sewing kit.
Trying to make it bearable.
A bucket with a lid served as their chamber pot. It smelled distinctly of earth and mustiness, but it was their sanctuary. They even possessed a battery-operated radio, a relatively new luxury, to catch low-volume news updates, playing calm orchestral music even as bombs shook the ground and sprinkled dirt onto their blankets.
The close calls they experienced were terrifyingly routine. A particularly loud explosion extinguished their candle, leaving them in total darkness, Margaret gasping. Tom reassures her, relights the candle, and they see each other's pale, wide eyes. This one was very near. They mentally note to check the house later.
You can imagine the fear.
But for now, they simply continue on. Tom darning a sock, Margaret doing a crossword puzzle, even softly singing, "We'll meet again."
This quiet intimacy, the creation of normalcy in such an abnormal confined space, is what makes the Anderson shelter a symbol of personal resilience. It wasn't just structural protection, but emotional.
Yeah.
They reminisce about building the shelter together, sharing cocoa and a rare half bar of chocolate, a treat from the American Red Cross. They talk about their hopes, a baby, a seaside holiday, using hope as a conscious shield against despair. Margaret's words, "As long as we're side by side, we can face anything," encapsulate the strength they found in each other.
The neighborhood endures another pounding, with incendiary bombs setting houses ablaze, their orange glow penetrating even their shelter. But then, near midnight, a lull. Tom cautiously lifts the flap, peering out into the cold, hazy night, hearing distant firefighting pumps and the crackling of burning wood. No all clear yet, but a clear break in the attack.
A brief respite.
They seize these quiet minutes for sleep, drifting into an uneasy slumber, still in their coats and boots, ready for whatever the night might bring next.
For Edward and Maud, our older couple, nights are the hardest. Maud's joints ache terribly from crouching under their Morrison shelter. Edward's nerves are frayed, but he puts on a brave face, even cracking a dry joke about being too stubborn to die in my own bed, bringing up memories of the Great War trenches to cope.
As a defense mechanism.
Maud quietly recites a psalm to calm them both. The direct impact is visceral. Plaster dust trickles from the ceiling, dishes crash from shelves. The worst moment comes when a detonation down the street blows in their front door, slamming against the wall.
Terrified.
Their hearts thudding. The release is palpable. Still here. We're still here. It's a stark reminder of how close they are to oblivion every single night.
This experience profoundly illustrates the nature of trauma and resilience in a collective setting. What's truly remarkable is the communal resolve that emerges. Edward recalls how experts had predicted widespread panic and thousands of mental breakdowns in London, but it simply never came to pass.
Yeah, the predictions were way off.
Maud observes how even nervous wrecks found unexpected strength, like their previously reclusive neighbor who now calmly coordinates the fire-watching Rhoda. Courage is contagious, she muses. Edward agrees, noting, even the lonely or cracked folk are part of the crowd now, all of us in the same boat.
It's fascinating.
This is perhaps the most astonishing psychological insight of the Blitz. The idea that facing an external enemy could somehow blunt internal struggles, and that a collective crisis could alleviate individual ones. It completely defied the experts' predictions. London hospitals, incredibly, saw only 2 serious bomberosis cases a week in the Blitz's first months. Some long-term psychiatric patients even saw their symptoms ease.
It's a powerful lesson in collective psychology. The social glue of the Blitz, the intense communal bond, provided an unexpected protective factor that mental health professionals in peacetime hadn't fully grasped. The shared purpose and collective determination seemed to overshadow individual anxieties for many, creating an almost therapeutic environment in the face of absolute terror.
But it wasn't a cure-all, right?
No, absolutely not.
Maud's worry about her cousin with schizophrenia, institutionalized in an asylum, serves as a crucial counterpoint. It highlights the profound vulnerability of those with severe mental illness. In 1940s Britain, with its poor understanding on crude treatments like sedatives or lobotomies, they were largely forgotten, their suffering often exacerbated by the chaos, with families bearing the burden alone amidst deep social stigma.
It's well after midnight in the underground station. The initial jollity has quieted. Many are asleep on the concrete floor, huddled beneath blankets, but Alice lies awake, her head on her rolled-up coat. The bombs sound more distant now, a less immediate threat.
There's a deeply poignant image described here. A young mother gently rocking a pram, an infant miraculously sleeping through the thunderous nights above. It's a tiny, powerful symbol of innocence and vulnerability persisting amidst unthinkable destruction, a profound contrast that underscores the unique fabric of life during the Blitz. Then the all-clear siren finally sounds at 5 a.m., that steady, continuous note replacing the oscillating wail. A collective sigh of relief passes through the station. Some rouse immediately. Others, like Alice, allow themselves a few more minutes of rest. By 6 a.m., she climbs out into the chilly early light. Smoke still hangs over the city, fires are still burning, and the sound of rubble being cleared has already begun.
Yes, the cleanup is immediate. Haggard but alive, Alice heads home to wash up and prepare for another day at work, her shoulders squared, a quiet determination evident in her posture. It's a testament to the ingrained resolve. Keep carrying on. London can take it.
No sense of defeat.
Only the commitment to begin again every single day.
In their garden shelter, Tom and Margaret manage a couple of hours of shallow sleep, only to be startled awake by a neighbor's knock. They emerge, stiff and blinking, to a devastating scene. 2 houses at the end of their street are gone, a smoking crater in their place. Margaret presses a hand to her mouth, tears welling.
This is where the sheer luck of survival becomes terrifyingly real and deeply personal. They both know it's pure chance the bombs fell there and not on them.
Chilling.
But instead of despair, there's an immediate instinctual urge to help. Tom knows he'll likely skip work to join the cleanup crew, a common practice with employers' blessings for such emergencies. The local community center will host the newly homeless.
You can almost feel their dust and exhaustion, but then there's this immediate instinctual urge to help. Margaret doesn't hesitate. She immediately offers their spare room to the neighbors whose house was destroyed. It's not just about surviving, it's about rebuilding, and perhaps more profoundly, it's about sharing what little you have.
That generosity, that immediate willingness to share limited resources is truly the essence of the Blitz spirit. The war truly bonded people into an extended family, however temporary the arrangement. Amid the devastation, Tom and Margaret find strength in each other, affirming, "Tonight we do it all over again, and we will together."
A powerful display of enduring unity. For Edward and Maud, dawn means crawling out from under their Morrison shelter, joints protesting. Their front door is blown in, glass litters the hallway, but miraculously their house still stands, largely unhurt. Maud quietly offers thanks in a heartfelt prayer.
And Edward, despite a sleepless night, immediately puts on his ARP warden's helmet and goes out to check on neighbors. He quickly learns that one nearby unexploded bomb has luckily been defused, a tense operation many watched from afar. These ARP wardens, the ordinary citizens performing critical duties, were the unsung heroes of the Blitz, ensuring the continuity of life amid chaos.
Maud, exhausted, still boiled water for tea and lays out porridge oats and powdered milk. They turn on the wireless for the 7 a.m. news summary, hearing Churchill's resolute words. This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. Those words must have resonated deeply, instilling a stoic resolve even as their world felt shattered.
Those words truly were a lifeline, a promise of a future beyond the immediate terror. Over their simple breakfast, they mourn dead neighbors, a family killed in a collapsed cellar. Maud's eyes glisten. Edward takes her hand. "That could have been us," he murmurs, sobering. It's a reminder of the constant, arbitrary nature of death during the Blitz, but it's met not with surrender, but with a renewed commitment to carry on.
Then, refusing to be beaten down, Maud rises to tidy up, planning her day. Windows to cover, a door to rehang, a trip to the rest center. By 9 a.m., despite their profound fatigue, they're back at work. Maud at the church helping prepare meals for the newly homeless. Edward directing repair crews for gas mains and phone lines. They'll carry on. They always do, Edward says.
And they know that come nightfall, they'll climb back under the shelter and face whatever comes once more. This cycle of destruction, immediate repair, and renewed resolve became the grim yet defiant rhythm of life. Our source material notes that in their hearts, and in thousands of other London homes, a quiet determination had taken root. They simply would not be terrorized into submission. The psychological toll was undeniable: anxiety, exhaustion, physical ailments from stress. But crucially, the feared collapse of morale never materialized.
So, as our characters greet another dawn, we see how their individual stories embody the millions of small, courageous acts that define the London Blitz. What does this all mean for our understanding of human nature under pressure?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights that war isn't just fought on battlefields, but profoundly impacts the mind and heart in kitchens, bedrooms, shelters, and hospitals.
Everywhere.
The London Blitz was truly a tapestry of terror and tenacity, demonstrating that resilience isn't just about bouncing back, but about adapting, finding new forms of purpose, and leaning into collective action when all else fails.
The city's physical landscape was forever altered by bomb damage, but its social fabric, in many ways, grew tighter. Ordinary people did extraordinary things. Firemen, wardens, women in factories and civil defense. Families sharing what little they had, and whole communities literally carrying on in defiance of overwhelming odds.
Nights brought destruction and death from the sky, but each morning Londoners swept up the glass, patched their windows, and resolved to begin again. Government propaganda certainly lauded their cheerfulness and the Blitz spirit, and foreign observers were astonished by the absence of chaos. There were no mass evacuations and panic.
People stayed.
In fact, many who could leave chose to stay or even return because home and hearth called stronger than fear. A Gallup poll in late 1940 even showed over 80% of Britons remained confident of victory, a phenomenon that truly baffled Hitler.
But beneath that veneer of stoicism, there was undeniable heartache. Over 43,000 civilians in Britain were killed in that Blitz year alone, with many more injured or homeless. Every Londoner knew grief. The psychological strain manifested in subtle, often hidden ways. Ulcers, sleeplessness, nervous tics, even spikes in miscarriages and bedwetting in children.
And the reality was that mental health care was simply not a headline concern. Resources were stretched desperately thin for the physically wounded, and the prevailing ethos was a stoic, keep mum and carry on. Trauma, for many, was simply buried.
Just push through.
Those with serious mental illnesses were especially vulnerable, with very little help reaching them. Their families often bore the burden alone, in shame, amidst the wider chaos of war. The Blitz spirit did not necessarily extend into the asylum walls, making their ordeal particularly bewildering and difficult.
Yet, even amidst this profound suffering, there were unexpected mercies. The shared experience thrust everyone into a collective effort, communities surprisingly paying more attention to the fragile among them. A kindly neighbor might check on the nervous man down the street.
Little kindnesses.
The Ministry of Information even published advice on fighting fear, a rudimentary but profoundly early attempt at psychological first aid.
And for some who struggled with inner demons in peacetime, the external threat strangely granted a sharp clarity. When bombs are falling, the voices in one's head or the weight of depression might fade into the background, overshadowed by the immediate urgency of survival and helping others.
A different focus.
The Blitz, as terrible as it was, gave a singular sense of purpose to civilians, which in some cases proved almost therapeutic where peacetime alienation had not. The collective fortitude was very real and perhaps the most astonishing counterintuitive finding for the experts of the day.
The London Blitz lasted from September 1940 to May 1941. It failed to break London's spirit. Alice will stand by the Thames embankment in May 1941, marveling that St. Paul's still stands proud amid the ruins.
A powerful symbol.
Tom and Margaret will mark the end of the Blitz by finally sleeping in their own bed again, listening to the unfamiliar, peaceful sound of crickets. Edward and Maud will emerge from their last night in the Morrison shelter, share celebratory tea, and proudly hang their Union Jack.
The war wasn't over, with V-1 and V-2 rockets still to come years later. But the worst of the sustained Blitz had been endured. The Blitz spirit became a legend, held up as the finest hour of British civility and courage. While historians note the nuances, acknowledging that not everyone was heroic, and that crime and inequality, though reduced, remained, the core truth persists. Civilians met an unprecedented ordeal with grit, solidarity, and an unyielding, almost defiant hope. This period of history was written not by generals, but by millions of ordinary people who simply refused to be broken.
What truly stands out to me from this deep dive is the astonishing human capacity for finding joy and purpose amidst the most unimaginable destruction. It's a powerful reminder that even when everything is literally falling apart around you, the core of who you are, the strength of your community, and the resilience of your hope can hold together.
And what's truly profound here is how the collective crisis of the Blitz, while horrific, brought about unexpected forms of resilience and even unity, particularly for those who might have struggled in isolation during peacetime. This raises an important question for you, our listener. In what ways do extraordinary external pressures reveal surprising, hidden strengths, both in individuals and in society as a whole?
That's a powerful thought to leave you with, and one that resonates far beyond this historical moment. This deep dive into the London Blitz isn't just a historical account, it's a profound look at human nature under the most extreme pressure. We hope you found these insights into a day in 1940s London as compelling as we have. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.